Well, guys, this is the first, isn't it? Full screen, live Pete in the Carrot Studio. It's not just me here. We're going to go to another scene now. Because also, here with me in the booth today is not been a bad beat, but James Shea. How does it feel to be called Ben a Bad Beat? He was recording with me the other day, so I forgot to rename the thing. Maybe he was, or maybe I just like write famous people's names on this, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, Barack Obama was on the other day, so I just haven't changed it yet, you know? Yeah. Actually, I coached Barack Obama a couple of years ago, and he also did grade 2 of the Carrot Poker School. Not really. Yeah. Well, sort of like 2014, you know, sort of like limp, call the button, fold to half pot, 60% of the time. That sort of strat, you know. Anyway, we're here because Twitch numbers were not very good, so we're going to monitor this, guys. And if you guys are going to show up here on mass, like we can make this a regular thing. What I need to do, James, is pull up some session footage here. So let's hope that we can do this in real time. We have no delay, so be careful what you say on YouTube. Stakes are high here, but you'd be used to that. We're going to go in and find a video of a recent session to play here. So let's go for media. Oh, do we have this already? That's not the right one, actually. That's like some old one. I don't think we want that one. Let's find the right one. Desktop, right? I'll talk about that in just a second. Wait till I just find this footage. I'm gonna go for this one. So yeah, as you can see, we can like zoom in on a table like as hands come. This might be a bit awkward actually, because we have to like zoom in as the hands come. Don't know how we're gonna do this. I haven't really thought it through. Like we can put it all on screen like this, but that's probably terrible for you guys. Like how terrible does this look for you guys if we did that? Oh my god, that's gross, right? I haven't thought this through. Or we can zoom in at one hand at a time. Or we could just use Poker Tracker. Maybe we'll just use Poker Tracker. Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about the Fortress, James, while I'm boomerang my way here trying to set this up for the first time. Tell us about the Fortress. When's it launching? Oh, wait. He says that you're muted. I don't know why you would be muted. Warning. The current stream's bitrate is blah, 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 blah. I can hear you. I don't think they can, though. Can you guys hear James? Like, what's happening? You can't hear him? Or you can? I don't see why they wouldn't be able to hear you. Okay, it must just be this track. Okay, that'll be why. Okay, what about now? James, speak again. Keep speaking. Say like animals, names, and colors and numbers.
I can't do that on.
All right. Say something.
I need to plan. I need to think ahead. I need to plan what animals I'm going to talk about.
There's still no audio from James.
I've got your the YouTube channel open at the same time. It's really hard listening to you twice. I can't tell which one.
Oh, it's working now. Okay, good. Yeah, it's just a track saying. Oh, good. Fuck's sake. Fuck's sake. I've had such a bad day today. I might talk about it in a minute, how bad a day I've had. Honestly, like, you've no idea how bad a day I've had. Fucking hell. I'm trying to keep it together, but I can't do it.
This is my favourite version of Pete, is when you're having, like... It doesn't have to be a bad day, but when you're having technical difficulties. I just love being on the call with you.
But it's a really bad day as well as technical difficulties. You also liked at that time that the guy phoned about the wood in the car. You liked that as well.
Funny. That was so funny.
Right, let's try PT4 then. Let's try PT4. Let's pull up some of my hands-on
Squeeze the lemon.
PT4. This month. That's it. Then we can do like, yeah, this'll work a lot better, I think. You guys are also going to see the background for the video player as used in the brand new series that I'm recording right now. I'm back in the lab and I'm making a new series called Weapons of War, and you're gonna see like one of the bits and bobs to it now.
You've covered me with the.
It's okay. I'm
PT4.
still setting up. Don't worry.
Okay.
Still setting up. Still setting up. All right. Replay all hands in report. And what you see and what they see isn't actually the same thing either, James, for the moment. Thank you for bearing with us, guys, as we set this up on this horrible day.
Do you want to talk about your day, or is it not?
No! I do want to talk about it, but I first need to not be doing technical. Why is it not working? Why wouldn't it?
Do you want to tell the guys on stream why you were trying to buy wood?
I was trying to buy wood because the goats were standing up on top of things and jumping up and wrecking the roof with their horns, okay, of their enclosure. And we had to get wood to fix it because they were standing on things and hitting their horns off the roof to break it, just to break it.
Unbelievable. And you went so hard to get the wood to repair the roof. And you didn't use it to repair the roof, did you? You used it to build a cat outhouse
Catio.
for all the stray cats that just kept turning up.
We now have 4 of them in the catio, and we bought them little houses for them to dwell in that with heated mats with like a power cord running around the outside of the house, and they were too stupid to go into the houses, so they just stood outside shivering. And then we put their food in the houses and took the tops off and lifted them in. They ate their breakfast in the houses. Then they would leave the houses and not understand how to go back in, even though they'd left via the cat flap. Fucking hate it. Fucking hate it, man. What a fucking stupid life. Honestly.
Oh, God.
Am I right, chat? What an existence, huh?
Just none of it makes any sense, the stuff that happens to you.
No.
I can't get over the fact that they managed to ram their horns into the roof of all things. The walls I would have understood, but the roof.
They did it intentionally as well. That was the worst part. They did it to be dicks.
It made eye contact with you as they did it.
Yeah, they're like, see that, mate? You're gonna have to buy some new wood, mate. Right. Anyway, maybe we should talk some poker.
Mm-hmm.
Chat's here. YouTube is here. The stream is running. We can see the stream. We have 46 viewers. We almost have as many as we'd have on Twitch already. Thomas said I look handsome. It must be true. Let's start with why my day is so bad. My day is so bad because I've been battling with Facebook, aka Meta, who have frozen our ad account. We're building Meta ads to run on Instagram, Facebook, etc. Well, my team is, and they've frozen our account because I tried to use a card for payment details that had been frozen by my bank for no reason, and they hadn't told me. So I had to phone the bank and get the card unfrozen, and then I had to contact Meta, which is impossible because they just send you like AI replies being like, too bad, you're a scammer, we're not going to unfreeze your account. And then I didn't get much sleep last night because I drank like 3 coffees yesterday evening when I was playing bridge. And I was mentoring like a bridge student, and that was really taxing, and I was drinking loads of coffees, and then I didn't sleep, and now loads of bad things happened, and now I'm mad. So that's today. But we're also excited because tomorrow the Fortress begins. So let's quickly touch on what the Fortress is before we get into this Ace Jack hand. James, what is this seminar workshop that's beginning that you're running tomorrow for Carrot Corner?
Yeah, so it's a set of 6 lectures. They'll be about 2 hours each, delivered kind of in a live format every Wednesday. And they'll all be recorded. So if anyone wants to join but can't attend the calls, then the video recordings will be sent to you, and you can submit questions and talk to them in between lectures if you need to. But it's really like a focus on it's there'll be some theory, there'll be some exploitative stuff, but the focus really is on like practical stuff. I think there's a lot of people who they end up getting like pretty good. They understand they've got a good kind of understanding of theory. They might have some good understanding of exploits, but then when it actually comes to like the practical application, they can start falling down. I think people who've got like an experience where they feel like they've got like a good understanding of the game, but it's not really translating into win rate, then maybe that sort of stuff applies to you. So it's really something that I don't see a lot elsewhere, which is actually like the practice of playing poker, actually like building strategies that you can implement, strategies that are based on theory, strategies that are based on kind of exploits, mistakes that the pool make, also strategies around like hiding your own mistakes. Like if there's a certain spot where you're overfolding or underraising or whatever it might be, then one solution is to get better at that spot, and that's something you should definitely work on. And we talk about that in the fortress. But another solution is to just get in that spot less often. I see a lot of guys, for example, they check back the flop too much and then overfold to turn probes, and it's like you've got this leak that you're overfolding to turn probes, and then you're also checking back the flop too much and kind of putting yourself in that spot more often than you need to. So it's things like that, things that are really focused on like practically playing the game of poker and improving in a practical sense, rather than just understanding more theory, but then not being able to translate that into win rate.
Yep. If you guys want to see a full syllabus of the Fortress, then you can head on over to this page. I'll just put it in the chat right now.
Yeah, I think my favorite lecture is probably the first half of the first lecture, because like that's really where I go into a lot of detail on like how to build study routines, what to study. If you don't know what to study, like what to do, how to do it. Really builds like a framework that we kind of we then kind of go into. The rest of the lectures are really based on that framework of this is how you study, this is what you want to study, this is how to build good routines, and what to focus on and what not to focus on, importantly as well. Before we kind of go into all that detail. So, like I say, really, really focused on improving the practical application, but also like giving you the framework to actually beat the games. Like I've really had a big focus on how to make you more money rather than some more kind of peripheral stuff, which might be understanding the theory better and so on.
Nice. I'm just having a field day with the YouTube emotes that I'm using for the first time ever. Look at that one. That's
Orange
great,
face
guys.
frowning. That's
yeah, it's proper carrot corner. That's how I'm feeling today. Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. It was great last year as well. Like we had 17 guys or something, and they all loved it. I got a lot of positive messages at the time. One guy said it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He said it was better than his wedding and better than having children. I said the guy, that's quite enough. It's inappropriate to say that. But yeah, we had a lot of good feedback. Anyway, we've been playing some poker. You asked me how it's been feeling to be playing some poker. I'm trying to only play at the moment when I'm feeling really in the zone. I was talking to Melissa, co-host of Poker Distilled, about that earlier today, and I was talking about this like feeling I get when I'm sat on this chair and I have like exactly 3 regular tables and 2 fast fold tables, and it's the right pace, I think, because like the regular tables are a bit softer and they provide like kind of dynamic stuff with the same players, and then the Zoom tables keep the action going, so you don't have that horrible downtime that you get when you're just like 5 tabling reg tables. And it's been creating the right level of busyness, I think, to be doing off stream. And I've also just been like really getting in touch with like my own A game and what that feels like and what it feels like to be a rational agent that assesses things objectively. So I do feel I've been playing a bit better. I've been playing 200 as well. I decided not to bother like trying to prove anything at 100. I thought it would take too long, and it was really depressing playing 100 Russian cash because it was just all nits. And like playing poker against nits over and over again in high rake is like fucking soul destroying, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't be bothered doing it. So gonna just be playing 200, 500, site selecting, game selecting over the next year. That's the plan. I know I've been saying this forever, guys, so I'm gonna start competing again, but I am getting up to a level now again where I feel like I'm getting back into study, back into play a bit more, and not playing like a total dick anymore. So that's something. So anyway, let's start with Ace Jack here. James, you sort of take the lead here as if I'm your student. I know that it used to be the other way around, but you're a bit of a beast now, and I'm a bit rusty. So let's switch roles here. You be the coach.
okay.
Low roll, obviously. Mix.
So just in terms of like pre-flop, made a video on pre-flop for you for the subscriber content, and this was like one of the spots which is like 3-betting from the big blind. Like, what's your strategy from 3-betting from the big blind? Because I've got maybe some opinions on it.
Yeah, so my strategy against weaker players is to linearize like quite heavily, especially in this rake structure, and not play lots of 3-bet pots that get annihilated by rate cap being very high and stuff like that. Against regs, I'm just a bit more theoretical. I think I'm just kind of like mixing in hands like this at low frequencies because it's not. These won't be polarization mistakes to 3-bet because they're not like good enough to be squandered, basically, and they have useful blockers and they survive well when called. So I'm okay with like hands like this, just a GTO kind of like approximation, basically, against regs, against the better players.
Yeah, I think like that might be fine, but my query with it is like, especially on GG, where because the rake is high, people are just supposed to fold like astronomical amounts of the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure how often they're supposed to fold here, but I think it'll be like high 60s.
Yep.
There's spots that like I think even like let me just have a quick look, like button versus small blind, even like 1 KNL GG rake, which is I think a fair bit lower than 200. They're supposed to fold like 66% of the time.
Yep.
Like really feel like they're just going to be over defending.
Is that to
in the high rake
13? Is
environment.
that 2? That's probably 2 to 13 or 2 to 12, or is it 2.5 to 12?
So button 2.5, small blind goes 12. The button's supposed to be folding 66.5%.
Yeah.
Which is obviously like a lot. Like different sizes from the big blind and stuff. But
Yep.
My gut feeling is I suspect the regs are just over defending. Like they're not folding some of the hands they're supposed to. And like some of the hands you're supposed to fold are pretty absurd. Like this, you're supposed to fold nines a lot of the time in this formation. I think it might depend on the sizes, but my gut feeling is that just a linear approach will be much better than a polarized approach. The problem with the linear approach is it weakens your calling range, and I think that's part of why the solver hates it from the big blind. But practically, I'm not sure that really affects you too much. I don't think people are going to exploit you post flop for having less king queen and stuff than you should do, like a solver would.
Yep, interesting. So just shifting our overall strategy, even against regs, towards linear and just foregoing lots of these bluffing hands, basically.
I think so. I think that makes sense. I mean, Ace Jack is part of the linear range. It's there'll be stuff like King 5
King 4 suited that we're just gonna call. Yeah.
Okay. I personally prefer that.
Yep, I agree. I think it's definitely an over continued spot, and I think flop can be quite over continued by in position on certain boards as well, like especially the boards that are like good for Ace Jack, which is good for Ace Jack, but less good for like some of the lower bluffy type hands in the range, maybe. Okay, cool. So we go for 3-bet this time, and we get called, and we have King 8-8, and we're just playing basically R33 here. Not you can go bigger here too, but I'm just not bothering. I'm just going R33. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm a big one for simplification. And if you just like range bet R, like like you say R33 here, it makes the game tree a lot easier. And having a checking range is going to be fine, but if you're going to make a mistake after checking, like if you're not check raising often enough, if you're check folding too much, then given that range bet 33 is a viable strategy, you're much better off just range betting 33. And I guess secondary to that, if you just range bet R33, then you're also trimming the game tree, right? Like you're going to make it a lot easier in the long run to study, because you don't need to study how to defend against the flop bet. You don't need to work out how to raise often enough. Yeah, right. And even like a lot of other boards that are that have a lower natural betting frequency, I don't think people are going to exploit you for range betting. The exploits are like pretty unnatural, and like trimming the game tree is just going to be like hugely valuable, especially with someone like coming up who isn't like super studied in a bunch of different spots. If you can just like half the number of spots that you need to study, the game's going to get a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think it's a spot where like if we did copy the solver strat of like B60 with some of range and B33 with other parts of range, it's like just a luxury when you're a fucking computer to build a strat like that. Humans don't really get such luxuries. Yeah,
I think there's maybe like I don't know if there is or not, but I feel like there might be a bit of a perception that you're not allowed to like do certain things like this. Like if the solver's only betting half the time in a certain spot, you're not allowed to range.
Sorry, James, give me a second. Like, fucking dogs, man.
It's fine. But I think like it's just a misconception. Like I know guys who have beaten like 1K, 2K. You can see some, if you can find some of old Patrick Howard's old like coaching footage or video footage, or there's a bunch of other guys that I know who play high stakes where they will just range bet a lot of boards that they're not supposed to range bet, and effectively like change the game tree into one where they range bet the flop and kind of go from there. So if if it works for guys playing like 1K, 2K, it's going to work for people playing below that as well.
All right. Sorry about the noise, guys. I can't stop them. They're going off their nuts. It's something outside, and I can't stop them. All right.
The cats are just sitting outside cold, and they're trying to warn you.
Like the cats are called, they're not going into their houses. 10
So yeah, I like
turn.
that. I like the bit flop.
10 turn. I think this is a pretty good card for our range, and therefore, what really bugs me, guys, YouTube audience, James, you'll know this, but it's when people don't know why a good card for your range is good to bet, where they're just like, oh, it's good for our range, so we bet. And then that involves them like betting all kinds of hands in random spots for no reason and just making all kinds of mistakes. So why is it good to bet a card that is good for your range? The simple answer is that your fold equity is legit just higher on cards that hit your range harder than villains. They're folding more than the pot odds norm there. And then you can bluff, like the more fold equity you have, the less pot equity and redraw and stuff like that you need. So here we have the queen out, which is fairly nutty. We have the redraw against things like King X. We have the ace over card and stuff like that. I would imagine what I'm doing here, James, is I'm just saying how great is the spot favorability wise. If it's positive, then I'm going to go ahead and build a. I'm going to be less strict with my bluff requirement. I'm going to be bluffing these hands at higher frequencies, and then yeah, I think ace jack here. You can do a lot of different things here sizing wise. I think you can bet jacks and stuff again for small. I think you can bet like a certain polar king for small. I think you can have a bigger bet as well here. Here, I actually do like to build a smaller bet into my strategy. I just quite enjoy it, and I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of the hands we're betting here. Queens, king X, jacks, ace 10, stuff like this. And you can't really go wrong building this out of position in 3-bet pots in general would be my ethos here. I kind of have a weird opinion on this, where I don't actually find it harder to build 2 sizes here than 1. I actually just find that when I'm bluffing, I just have some vague idea of like what bluffs to put in where, and then when I'm value betting, it's more guided by hand strength for the most part, so I'm not as worried about it. Some people object to that and like to only have 1 size on turn. I personally don't find it that bad to have 2 sizes in the spot, so I probably do have 2 sizes in the spot.
Yeah, I mean, like as a general rule, if you want to have like 1 size in a lot of spots, and then occasionally there's just a situation where you're like 2 sizes here just makes a lot of sense, then that's going to be fine. And there's a lot of spots where you might just want to build 2 sizes. That's absolutely fine as well. So yeah, I think that's fine. If this is a spot where, like a lot of the time, it'll be in spots where the board is just more favorable for you. Like you said, this is a spot where you want to barrel aggressively, and the problem with barreling aggressively is you just have like a bunch of mid-strength hands that struggle in that environment. You've got like you said, a bunch of 10x, jacks, queens, all this stuff that if you've only got a B60 is going to struggle. Like I guess you just end up with like a lot of a checking range, but if you build a B33 or whatever it is size, then those end up just barreling without any trouble. Like it's quite clear that a lot of those hands are just going to be relatively clean value bets.
Right, and a cool thought experiment would be like if you have a range of aces and your opponent has a range of 7-5 offsuit, and the flop comes 6-3 deuce, so the 7-5 offsuit has a gut shot, and you have a range of aces. Talk about this in Carrot Poker School. The GTO is that he checks all the time and you bet all the time. Like you bet always, and the reason you bet always is that he knows your range is aces and you know his range is 7-5, and if you check, he just gets a free one and will never bluff the turn when he doesn't hit. So you just take the protection. And that's an extreme, right? That's like a toy game. But the closer you get towards that extreme, that toy game, the more of your range you want to be betting for a small sizing. And on a 10 turn, we're getting closer towards that toy game than we are on like an ace, or maybe not an ace turn, but maybe like a deuce turn. Where we're slightly more polar, or if the flop was 9-8 deuce and the turn was another deuce, we're in B60 land because we're just more polar. We have more big overpair now, less medium stuff, and less of an advantage equity wise. So the closer you get to that, like having a big range advantage but still having a merged range, the more you just want to be like R33ing or R25ing. We're not all the way there here, but we're on the road to that, right? Which is why I would have the smaller bet.
Yeah, makes
anyway,
sense.
Sorry if that was like really convoluted, guys, but I wanted to like sort of put that in theory perspective. Thank you, Stephanie. Glad you liked the toy game. By the way, pay attention to James. Sorry, I was distracted by the horrendous dogs. Okay, come to chat later. Okay, villain folds, nothing to say. Next hand, we have pocket nines. We're in the cutoff. We open. This hand is an absolute peach of a hand, guys. This is a really cool one. I'm intrigued to hear what you'll think of this one. All right, we go 2.2, villain 3 bets to 10. We make the defend with 9s, and we go to a flop of king 8 deuce. Villain goes quarter pot, and I think we have a pure defend with 9 of clubs, 9x, probably not a raise. Any frequency. The turn is the deuce of diamonds, and I think this is now basically a mix. in GTO. Like, it's going to get very, very close. I think we are supposed to call sometimes, because if we fold all the underpair, we actually know this. I've checked out in the solver since, like, we're overfolding. And in practice, if this was 100 Russian cash, I would actually just fold, probably pure. And I think at 200 against some of the better regs, I am just mixing here. And I did actually just roll this one, which indicates that I probably wasn't against like a nitty flag, if that makes sense. I was against a more aggro flag. Yeah, let's just get your input up to this point.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say other than what you said. It's you just got a fairly indifferent spot. You're going to find like a bunch of these spots where it probably doesn't really matter what you do. You're just fairly indifferent, and you can go either way.
Cool.
It's I guess it'd be. I wonder what's your kind of thought in terms of the fact this is a relatively unintuitive board. In one sense, it's relatively unintuitive board to find a bunch of barrels because there's no like straight draws, gut shots, flush draws are relatively rare compared to like if that 8's a 10, then suddenly there's like a ton of natural bluffs.
Yeah, and we know from Grady that the most overbluff spot in 3-bet pots is double Broadway turn Brick River. Like that spot gets very, especially if it's on the flop already, like King 10 3 is like really overbluffed by river compared to other textures. And I think I do roll against the strong players, definitely not against like most players. And remember, when I'm reviewing Gauntlet in 25NL, I'm telling people to hard exploit and not roll, right? So do bear that in mind. Rolling for me is a rarity. This was a roll, I confess. I actually legit rolled here because I just didn't know. Surely one play will be better than the other, right? We're not actually indifferent, but I don't know which castle has the most bricks, to put it into grade 2, lecture 6 terms. So we call, and the river is the queen of diamonds, and that villain very quickly checks. Thoughts?
It's hard to like these spots are like, I think just naturally very hard to assess because you're in a river blunder theorem spot, and the reason is because like your opponent, like, they've polarized on the flop and the turn, and now they've checked the river, so they're going to have a lot of folds. So you're in a situation where checking is clearly like very high EV, and jamming is also like very clearly very high EV. On like a blank turn, it would just be a very clear check, but on the queen, suddenly your showdown value diminishes. You have like a bunch of hands that you can bet and get to fold, so it's kind of hard to assess. Whether betting or checking is going to be better. My gut would say probably checking. I think people are a little bit passive in 3-bet pots, especially when, like in terms of value betting. If you look at how thin you're supposed to value bet when you triple barrel in 3-bet pots, it's kind of remarkably thin in a bunch of spots. Like if villain jams the river and gets called and has like 40% equity, he's supposed to jam the river. Like the threshold of 50% isn't true in these spots.
Not in this spot though, because it's SPR like over 1. I think that's when SPR is like 0.4 or something like that, 0.3, like really low.
Can even be like 0.7. It's whenever like the river's a jam and there's no like raise option, it gets kind of because you just have to beat like checking. It just has to be better than checking jamming. So yeah, like I think people are potentially not going to value bet thin enough, especially on the flush close river. So maybe they just have more like King Jack, King 10 and that sort of thing, which might be supposed to jam the river sometimes. I'm not sure. So I don't really know is the answer, but my gut would be to say like potentially just check because people aren't value betting thin enough on the river. But at the same time, jamming might also be close in EV.
So to say something that Easty would say, if we had checked here, this hand obviously wouldn't have made it into fucking punt or no punt. So clearly we jam the river here. And we get instantly called by a very good bluff catcher, to be fair, the Ace of Diamonds Queen, which is about the best bluff catcher imaginable. It has the nut flush blocker. It unblocks all of our bluffs because we don't have Ace of Diamonds bluffs on this node, and it also blocks King, Queen, and Pocket Queen. So this is a very, very good bluff catch and a very, very good call, in theory, by villain. I did sim this, and the solver was... I learned a few interesting things about the spot. The first thing I learned is that when we have Ace-X of clubs, we actually never bluff because we do have some showdown and the blockers are just horrendous. And when we have 9s, we also have some showdown, but the blockers are great because we don't block any folds. So it's like bad blockers and low showdown, same as like you're kind of, you'd rather check. And then when you have way better blockers and more showdown, you actually can bluff, right? So it's kind of interesting. You beat less of villain's range with 9s. Sorry, you beat more villain's range with 9s you do with Ace-Jack of clubs, but the blockers are so bad with Ace-Jack of clubs that 9s is still indifferent between betting and checking, and Ace-Jack of clubs isn't. So I really, after that, just like something clicked where I was like, God damn it! Like I would have like probably made river blunt. I would probably have thought that when I had ace five of clubs here, I had the jam. But actually, you don't, because you've still got a little bit of chop. You've got some chop EV, and you've got the worst blockers ever. You're getting called at way higher frequency when you have those two cards. So that's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah. I guess it's the unintuitive nature of the fact that like villain's polarized, but also quite tight.
Mhm.
So those blocker effects are going to be like a lot bigger. And if you think about like what his turn barreling range is, it's interesting that he barrels ace queen. Like it's probably a pretty good barrel. No, it almost certainly is a pretty good barrel.
With the diamond, especially, right?
Yeah. So I didn't mention it, but I did wonder like, although it's fairly unintuitive to find barrels in the sense of like there aren't that many natural draws, but at the same time, I don't know how often people are just going to barrel because there's a king on the board and like it's a favorable, favorable lineup. And I guess that's where against, like you were saying, against decent reg, you can't just fold everything.
Yep. I think there's a breed of player who just always bets this turn with like any like hand that's devoid of showdown value, and because there are players like that, even though they're not that many, they really drive up the overall bluff frequency of the pool a lot, because like almost anyone can bluff here with a draw or with like ace queen with ace of diamonds for the most part, but then like there's some guys that are bluffing ace 10 of spades every single time and stuff like that. So I think turn call is reasonable. I don't feel strongly about it. River, I ran this through the Benababi hand history checker, which is my Discord chat with Ben, and he was kind of saying if the check is really quick, it's actually quite telling in the spot, which it was. I don't know if I made that clear, but Villain checked very quickly here in game, and that was one of the main things that made me just like decide to go for the shove. Of course, Villain had a very obvious check in hindsight, seeing his cards, but if he is going to slow play a flush or do something really tricky trappy here, like check, I don't know, pocket kings or pocket queens, it's unlikely that he's going to do it that quickly, so that's just more food for thought.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, those guys who are just going to barrel like at the turn a bunch here. I'd imagine those are the same guys who are just going to triple just because there's a king. It's a dry board.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you can like identify who those guys are, then that's going to be like a huge.
Now we're winning less often by checking as well. Yeah, if that's the case, we're now winning way less often by checking. But yeah, okay, cool. So we did get burned there, but I wasn't upset with that play. I did feel it was close as well, like you did, and I could see arguments both ways. This is very true, actually, from Zen Madman Poker. Snap check feels condensing, capping, but also eliminates bluff candidates that are give-ups. I agree with that strongly. And yeah, sometimes you will get heroed by some hand that shouldn't ever call. Like ace queen of hearts, here's a pure fold in GTO. I bet you it heroes sometimes, right? So this could well be underfolded. So hard to know. So hard to know whether that's overfolded or underfolded. So many factors. All right, we have pocket queens. We have 4-bet under the gun against button. And we have got to a flop of ace 8-7. I decided on this particular texture with the 8 and the 7 being present, the fact that I have kings and queens more than villain, the ace, that I could actually build the checking range here, and so I decided I would do that. I also thought people would play very straightforwardly against check on this texture, which was my main like thing that made me feel it was okay in terms of...
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's the... Sorry, in terms of what?
Chat?
I missed something there.
In terms of... We're waiting for them to tell you.
Yeah, I've got no idea. Yeah, it can be kind of awkward to know what to do. Archery EV, there you go. It kind of feels a bit weird, right? Like you just have this part of your range that's just, you just play it super face up, and then the other guy also plays his range like super face up, and then you're just both like come to an agreement that you're like, you're gonna like, I'm gonna check down queens and you're gonna check down like jacks and tens, and I'm gonna go for like a thin value vet at some point, and you're probably gonna call, and you just all agree that's how this hand's gonna be played. Right?
It's like tacit consent to like some stupid like non-GTO reality. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You get it in like two, like you open the button and the guy like calls the big blind, and you've got like ace king and you whiff, and you both just agree we're both just gonna check down ace high, and I'm gonna win with ace king. Yeah,
I agree. If you look at what he's actually meant to do here. Like, we're also going to block every bluff in the world because the bluffs are going to be like exclusively king queen suited or something anyway with these two suits. So if we do check and face a bet here, I'm just going to muck my hand immediately.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's the ranges are just so tight, and like if you think about like what his like 4-bet calling rate, like the range that calls the 4-bet is going to be on the like the ace just connects so hard with it, and it's going to be like a bunch of pocket pairs that aren't going to bluff you an ace, and then there's going to be some suited connectors in there, but like you say, you just block them super heavily, and you know it's not necessarily that easy in like a tight formation 4-bet pot for someone to just start bluffing with no equity. You know, if you've got like queen jack of diamonds or something.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm gonna just pause the stream on my end in case it's eating up my latency a bit here. Did that improve things? 2690. It feels a bit blurry. Is it a bit blurry for you guys? Let us know what the quality is actually like. I'll leave that pause for a second and see what it does. All
It's
right,
a cool,
so
cool background, by the way, on the replay.
this is actually for Weapons of War, which is the course that's dropping in early November, 1st of November, Friday at Carrot Corner. It's a 10-episode course about some of the very, very cool bet sizes and weapons that you can utilize in an array of common spots that aren't just theoretically sound, but also hard for your opponents to deal with and just really, really good. So yeah, Weapons of War coming to you in November. I'll say more in the weeks to come. Today, though, it's all about the Fortress. Do check out this link right here to sign up. James is running a seminar course. It's 6 weeks long, about 2 hours per class, bit of Q&A at the end. You don't have to attend. They're all recorded. When you sign up at that link, you'll be added into the Discord group.
Yeah, it's super good. I'm super proud of it. So sign up.
It's a very good course, I have to say. Like, I don't normally like to say that other people's stuff is good, but this is a really, really good course. Even when I'm profiting from it.
We're going to run it as well, so
it's probably the last time. Yeah, we're talking about turning it into different formats in the future and like boot camps and stuff that'll be much more expensive. So it'll be part of a much bigger, more expensive boot camp in the future. It probably won't run as an individual thing again. So this is your last chance to get in while it's in this format.
So 10 of diamonds, 10. What are your thoughts here?
I think Villain just again has a range that's devoid of bluffs if I check, and finding out for free what he's got is really useful. He probably won't start bluffing jacks very often if I check turn, even though that might be a great thing to do against my true checking range twice. So I figured I would just check and I would go to the river, and if I do face a big bet, I will just muck my hand. I have a very similar game plan. Due to that tacitly agreed upon situation that you described earlier here, I'm just going to check fold the turn again.
My one thought is like this feels like we could get a street of value. Maybe do you think it's too thin to be getting like a B25 street at some point, either turn or river?
Not if turn goes check check, but going for that now in the dark into a range that still contains ace-x and jack and tens just feels a bit silly. But no, if it goes check check, I can see going for that on river being okay.
Yeah, because at the same time, it's going to be a lot easier to get that street of value on the turn than it is on the river. I feel like jacks and nines just aren't going to fold the turn, but they've
That's true.
Definitely got a chance to fold the river. So it feels
That's very
like
true.
On the one hand, feels like now's the time to go for value, but on the other hand, it might be too thin given that Villain can't just have an ace or.
One thing I like to teach my students is that if you're out of position, you're not actually closing the action by checking anyway. So it's not like check is this amazing line that's just going to like propel you to the next street. You might face a bet anyway. Like, so blocking, even if you want to block, even if you want to block 20% pot here or 15% pot here, like it's okay, right? It's not a bad line. Maybe you'd say you don't want to build that in, you don't want to fuck with that, fair enough, but it's not going to be a bad line to block like 15% pot sometimes here or something like that. I think it's probably okay.
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, it's a super basic thought process, but a lot of the time I'm just thinking like, is this a 1 street hand, 2 street hand, or 3 street hand? And if it is, what are the best streets to get the value from? If it's a two street hand, do I want to bet flop and turn? Is it better to check the flop and bet turn and river?
Right.
Or, whatever it might be. This feels like a 1 street hand, and definitely agree that betting the flop, like checking the flop, is you just get a lot of what do you call clairvoyance. And again, checking the turn, you'll get even more. So there's definitely benefit in checking the turn, but also if it's a 1 street hand, it feels like the turn's the better street to get it. So
it's a hell of a trade off, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we get more value against nines and jacks by betting now, but we also save more money against ace-x by checking now and pocket tens by checking now. So we check, they go big, and we say, nice hand, sir. If you've bluffed me here, I'm very, very impressed. I think you're under-bluffing by a shit ton, and I would be shocked if even the great Benababi was bluffing enough here, or players of that ilk.
I suspect there's at least 1 10 in his hand. Maybe 2 10s, maybe an ace and a 10.
Maybe like ace king that's just decided it's good now and is gonna like make up for lost ground sometimes, but yeah. Okay, so we fold. Next hand, queens again. We open the button and it goes call by big blind. 8-6-6. I'm gonna be playing, if this is a reg, I'm gonna be playing small bets on this texture. The 6 is relevantly paired enough that I go small. If it's a deuce or a 3 that's paired, I go big. That's my heuristic. This time we bet, although checking is fine. The turn is a 7.
It's quite interesting, the reason for that being, like, the 6 is still fairly low. It's the reason that if it's like a 2 or a 3 that's paired is that Villain just doesn't have that many 2x or 3x in his range at all, so you're not really worried about trips. Whereas as the pair gets higher, villain's going to have like more and more trips in their range, and
Correct.
so you have to size down, right? But and like that's 100% right. I just wonder whether sixes is still fine. Like given that he's not going to have like that many offsuit 6x, I suspect that offsuit hands come in at like the 7 or the 8x
Yeah,
portion of the range. Did you?
maybe.
What was your pre-flop size? Because that'll obviously
2.5 on
affect it.
button.
2.5,
Yeah.
right? So yeah. So
I
that there'll
do
be
3x the button against certain players in this pool by 2.5 unless I have an exploit going on.
yeah, because if you like 2x, they're going to have 7/6 off in their range, right? Whereas
Correct.
if you 2.5, they're probably not. So I wonder whether you can still go big on. It's
Yep.
like I don't really generally I really don't care that much about like sizings as long as they make like some level of sense.
Yep.
But just since you mentioned it, I just wondered whether
Makes a lot of sense.
a 6 is fine to go big on. But I think a strategy is fine. I don't really care that much about sizing.
Cool. So we get the 7 turn. I think our hand's probably an optional but highest frequency value bet. I think on a paired flop, you bet this a lot more on the turn than you do on like 8-7-6 deuce because you just aren't losing to any like 8-7 combos here. And I think like the exploit here is that 6x doesn't slow play flop enough compared to what solver does. That would be my read, and therefore I think our hand's a bit higher equity here than it would be in GTO. So I don't know if I'm pure betting or rolling this. I do think it's close, but if you made me guess, I'd say I'm maybe like pure betting this combo as an exploit.
Yeah, I wonder how often they're supposed to slow play.
A 6? I would
A
guess
6 on the flop.
I'd guess like
It's a
30% or something.
Yeah, it's a decent amount. It's something that like
Tell me it's exactly 30%, James.
exactly 30%. Yeah, it looks like about 30%. So yeah. Probably, especially at the size that you went, it's probably true that people aren't slow playing enough. It's interesting. It kind of depends. Like I've been in different pools, and different pools definitely play differently. There's some pools where when the board's paired, people will just like triple barrel super aggressively because they'll be like, "Oh, you would have raised trips on the flop." And so there's certain pools where I'm just like calling a 6 an absolute ton. And like I would be raising like the big sixes that are just like super. I'm going to raise and get all the money for value. But if I had like 6-5 here,
Yeah.
in that pool, then I'd be like, I'm just going to call because once the money goes in, I might be value cutting myself a little bit, and people are just going to barrel super aggressively. I suspect GG isn't that pool. You just want to just fast play 6.
It's really nice point as well because you're then kind of saying I'm humanizing my strategy. A solver's going to have like 6-5 as a what it does, and I made this episode of Weapons of War yesterday, so it's fresh in my head. Like using it's called the swords of check raising. There's a long sword and a short sword, and the short sword is like your 3.5x that you would build on this flop, and you would use like 8x, and you'd use 5s and 7s and stuff like that, and 9s, and then you have like the long sword, which is like purely for bolts and good 6x. And then what would happen in GTO is like, at least in the sim I was looking at, was that like 6-4, 6-5, 9-6 suited would usually just either call and slow play, or they would use the short sword sizing, and then like the ace 6 king 6 starts like quite heavily using the 7x sizing. And then if you don't want to do that, if you're just using one size, a good way to get some slow plays in is, as James says, just to call the lower 6s and raise the bigger ones a bit more.
Yeah, right. Like you're not trying to copy a solver, you're trying to build like a human viable strategy that's like based on some concepts from what the solver's doing. Yeah, I do. I guess like if we think people aren't slow playing this, yeah, you should barrel too much and bet thin for value and like not worry about getting raised that often on the turn either. So yeah, maybe like you mentioned rolling, maybe it's just best to just triple queens here.
Yep.
And I like the size as well. Like you probably can just like overbet the turn, especially if you think people are under raising the flop with a 6, over raising the flop with a 6. But at the same time, like once you've overbet the turn, the river gets like pretty dicey, right? Like it makes more sense to me to just I'm comfortable going like 2/3 turn, 2/3 river. But if I go like overbet turn, then suddenly I don't know if I'm supposed to value bet the river or not. So I'd rather just like play a strategy that I know is like good and go 2/3 on the turn, 2/3 river, rather than be like, oh, maybe I can overbet the turn and then end up like I don't know what to do on the river when they call.
Nice. For some reason, it gave me a gigantic version of this image. I was trying to show people another spoiler of Weapons of War, and it made the image so big that now I look like a fucking idiot, like reducing it over and over again. I'm so unhappy.
Why is it that big?
That's what she said. I don't know, it's so bad.
Unbelievable.
There we go. There's the short swords. There's the swords of check raising, guys. This is in the title slide for episode 3 of the course. The swords of check raising. Do you like the little bent, pathetic short sword?
Why is it? I don't like that it's bent. I like the hilt.
This happened to one of my kitchen knives the other day. I had to buy new ones. That literally happened. So it's weird that the AI picked up on that and generated this. So yeah.
Oh, God.
Anyway, we went for this in villain called, and we got the Jack of Diamonds river, villain checked. And here I remember wondering, like, is this too thin to bet river with. And honestly, I think it might be, looking at this now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the general mistake that people make is not going thin enough on the river. Just like a mistake that I see people making at like literally all levels. Like even like above, even at like high stakes, probably the most common mistake at all, like probably all levels. Maybe there's a level that is different, but it's just not going thin enough for value, like missing thin value bets. But then the counter to that is it can be like unintuitive how not thin you're supposed to go on flush close rivers, flush close turns. Suddenly the solver like really knits it up, and like people do to an extent, but like it can be kind of stuck. If this is the jack of spades, you'll probably find the solver going like way thinner, way thinner for value. So yeah, like given that, I'd probably say if you don't know, then be passive on the flush close river and be aggressive on the non-flush close river.
The human tendency is the opposite, so you have to counteract it a bit. Human tendency is to underreact, so you have to overreact, but based on what's natural to you. Yeah, I love it.
The alternative would be to just consider like blocking and just say like good luck finding enough check raises. Maybe because it's flush close, they can find enough. You know, they're going to have like some blocker hands, and it can be obvious, but maybe that might be like player dependent. If you think the guy's not really capable of finding a bunch of check raises, then go for the block.
Yep. I think we should definitely acknowledge that this is uncomfortable to value bet. Yes, I think this is definitely uncomfortable to value bet, and I think it's close. And I think that the mental game leak I have in game in a spot like this is I start to contemplate betting. I feel queasy about it. I back that because I think it's based on logic. Then I start to go to check, and then a voice goes, "Yo, you gonna check him, man? You gonna check this fucking spot, bitch?" And I'm like, what? And it's like, what you doing, man? And I'm like, okay, I'll bet then. I'll bet. I want to be like perceived as a coward. And then I bet. That's what happens.
Yeah, I've just like brought up a solve, and it's indifferent. It's not sure. Solver isn't really sure either. Which implies it's close. The problem with betting and like obviously the river's flush closed. Suddenly your villains made like a bunch of stronger hands than you, which means their calling range is now just stronger. The hands that they would have called before that a threshold would now be folds that you're beating. You know, they're going to call like 8x and 7x less often, and they're just going to have more flushes. So it's not like how far ahead of their range you are; it's how far ahead of their calling range you are. And then also acknowledging that you're like reopening the action, you are going to get like jammed on some of the time, which is going to turn your hand into like just a 0 EV hand. So like you actually need. I think when you're in position, you actually need like an astronomical amount of equity to value bet the river in a bunch of spots. Like we've got this. It's one of the final episode of the Fortress. Actually, we talk about value betting river in position, and there's spots where you could have. I think I pulled up a spot where we've got like 72% equity against villain's calling range, and we still have to check the river because we could face check raises.
Yep, we're reopening. So check back.
But then
sees the whole.
An exploit to that could be if people aren't check raising often enough, then you can obviously go thinner for value. So that's a kind of counterpoint. But yeah, this is probably close to the threshold. I probably don't really mind either way.
Cool. So I'm glad that my instinct that it was uncomfortable and close was right. What I'm getting the sense so far is that we're not disagreeing about very much so far, but we'll see how it goes. This is me playing a lot.
The one thing I just had is like I say, the more what you can do is if you're like uncomfortable about value betting, you're not really sure, is just like pick the size that you're uncomfortable value betting and then just size down a bit. Like if you're not sure here, you could just go half pot.
Yep.
Maybe that's what you did do. I don't know. 13.
I think I kind of like sized this size, and then the voice was like, no, I probably sized like 9 big blinds, and it was like, less than 10, mate. You can bet less than 10 fucking big blinds. What are you, a pansy? And I was like, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll bet 13.7. Is that okay? It was like, aye, better.
You got like an inner voice that just like craps on you whenever you're afraid.
A voice that laughs every time I'm down. A voice that blah, 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 Linkin Park going through my head. No, yeah, pretty much. No, that's a face. It watches everything. They've got a female singer now, James. Did you see? Linkin Park got a female singer now. Replaced Chester.
I don't know anything about Linkin Park.
That's a shame because they were great.
I know. R. I think I know one of their songs, but I don't know which one.
Probably in the end.
Numb.
Oh, Numb. Yeah, that came later. You're younger than me. Okay, fair enough. Okay. All right. 4-bet. Jam. Call.
Smashed.
Only won. That was a shame. Used up our king on the first board and then couldn't. Or
the only king.
Yeah. The only king, yeah. Ace 10, opening blind versus blind, 4 betting this time, being called. King 7 5. Probably going for a lot of small bet here with range. Any thoughts so far?
It's hard to analyze GG. Like GG is just such a different environment because the rake is high.
Mm.
I don't like in like a on a different site. I don't really like your pre-flop size.
Mhm.
Because like the solver will use like small sizes, right? In like blind v blind, they'll go from 9 to like 21, or like 9 to 20. And the reasons that can be really good is like one, if you're doing hands like ace 10, like it's kind of like a value raise, like when the guy calls, you've actually got like a ton of equity, but also it's just really, really unnatural to play against. It's just hard to
Yeah.
call often enough against the small size.
He's got a polar
like
range in this spot in theory as well. So like going big against the polar range doesn't really make that much sense. Like if it's cutoff versus button, this size makes more sense, but blind versus blind, you're absolutely right. This should be smaller theoretically. Yeah.
Yeah, but not just theoretically, just from like an exponent point of view, it's just like harder to play against. Like the bigger you go, the easier it is to just like fold the crap and all the good stuff. And even if the guy is like a little bit more linear, I think a lot of guys will still just be like uncomfortable calling some like suited kings, some suited connectors, some like offsuit broadways against the 4-bet, and then yeah, like I think it's just much harder to play against the small size than the big size, but they're supposed to defend a little more often against the small size, and maybe that's just a really terrible thing to do on GG because of the rake structure. So I don't know about GG, but I personally prefer the smaller sizes just because they're harder to play against. Yep. And also, like if you're like well studied and you can play 4-bet pots confidently post flop against a pool that would struggle against them, which I guess GG 200 is probably some of the guys at least are going to be in that situation. Then go small, keep the ranges wide, and then just like barrel super aggressively post flop and say like good luck.
Yeah, this is one of these hot spots where if we just start offloading our money into the middle, people are going to overfold many textures.
Yeah, like the thing about 4-bet pots is like we'll probably see it in the hand. Yeah, let's see it in the hand. Let's go to the flop. So if you look at like the size that we're using, you'll see it on the flop, but also the turn. You imagine how often like people have to defend against it. Like they're not allowed to overfold the pot as normal, I think, in this spot. So they're only allowed to fold like 20% of the time on the flop. They see it's like an unfavorable turn card, so maybe it's slightly more, but like against this bet again, they're probably only allowed to fold like 20% of the time on the turn, right? Like they're just not allowed to fold. And then you jam the river and you've got like a 50% pot behind and they're only allowed to fold 33% of the time. And it's like if you just triple barrel, you're really putting someone to the test and say like you're only allowed to fold like 20 to 25% on each street.
Yep.
Like, good luck.
This is where like jacks and tens and nines have to mix call again and stuff like that, right. And it's just very overfolded. When we have
blind in a 4-bet pot, like right. Ranges are still wide because it's a 4-bet pot, and if you've gone smaller, they're even wider still.
To be honest, though,
if it's like cutter versus button or hijack versus button, then things are different. The ranges are a lot tighter, but blind, you can really punish people here.
To be fair, though, to be fair, yeah, you should be. It's really rude. What I would say is that because people miss the 4-bet bluffs around like the queen jack and stuff here, like there's like queen jack off and like some weird ones like this in there, and probably also don't 4-bet like nines and then bluff this spot. This is probably very underbluffed. Even for the sizing, it's probably like verging on not bluffed, and therefore like folding your tens all the time here is probably not bad against humans in this in the stakes that you guys play. Watching this, especially if you're playing like 25-50 an L or something, you probably should just fold here.
Yeah, it's just hard to find you just don't have the pre-flop range. Even if you bow like all of your air, the pre-flop range just doesn't have enough air in it here to find enough bluffs.
Yep.
James isn't impressed with the impressions. I don't think I understand the impressions, to be honest. It's difficult when you're like talking about hands and doing like multiple things at once. You forget. I'm just like, oh, Pete's doing something again. I'm going to think about the hand.
Yeah, I can tell you're dialed in. It's good though. It's good. You wouldn't want to sign up for the Fortress and then James is just like laughing and doing impressions all the time. You're paying good money. You want a serious coach, so we want to do the Fortress.
Do like another impression soon, and let's see if I realize that you've done one. Doesn't have to be right now.
Who am I impersonating at the moment? I don't really know. I don't really have like a favorite. How I have like a favorite to impersonate at times. Like it was Jordan Peterson for a long time. It used to be Donald Trump.
John Peterson's a good one to impersonate. Cool. We haven't jacks.
Yeah. Well, you've got pocket jacks. Yeah. Well, see how that's gonna go for you, eh?
It's such a good voice to impersonate, isn't it? It's like genderless.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so we are going for mostly small. When it's a 6 and a 3, I think. Just small bets. Yeah, I don't really care, though.
No,
Don't really
don't,
care.
don't care. I just range bet him. I guess like there's this weird like meta on these king high boards where some people will just like check back sometimes, but like a king high board is the board that people are just range betting on, and so as soon as someone checks back, it's like like you've done this for a reason, right? Like some people will just have checking ranges on all boards, and they'll just overfold to the turn probe because the range is too weak, and they don't also know why you're supposed to defend against turn probes. But then a bunch of guys, like say, are gonna like be wise to that, and they're gonna check back like a showdown value heavy range, which I guess is what you would be doing. And then as soon as it's like a board like this where you'll just end up betting all your air and then checking back like a strong range, then a few guys are just going to have like a bunch of jacks. So I kind of want to like feel comfortable just checking back the flop with jacks and saying, like I don't know how often you're supposed to probe the turn, but I think it's around about in the 20s or 30s, and just say like good luck getting that right. You're going to over probe, and I'm just going to be like too strong here. But then as soon as someone checks back a king high board in a spot like this, it does feel a bit like they're going to be really showdown heavy, and you should like not barrel that often, not bet the turn that often, and like over bet as villain.
Do the Cockney playing poker live voice? Yeah, no, I agree, James. Totally. I just said, all right. What you have? What you have? You have Ice King, yeah? What you have?
It's just a generic live player. That's not a Cockney, is it?
What you have? What you fucking have? I don't know. It's not very good.
Just
anyway.
A drunk one. Bet flop check turn, yeah, just super straightforward.
Go for bet check bet. Villain was... Oh, I actually shouted a very rude obscenity at the screen here that I'm not going to repeat, but I remember shouting it.
Go on, king queen. Just terrible, isn't it? It's just, I was like people just don't really understand how you're supposed to like play the value portion of your region on the river. So I was going to say like villain will check a king like far too often here. Like he's probably supposed to value bet like an 8 and then everything better than an 8. And people just won't do that. They'll miss in value bets, and B, they won't understand that they're supposed to they're not supposed to check call king queen here.
Yeah.
Like it's just always supposed to be a bet. If it's a check, it's because you're check raising a lot of the time. This just isn't really a thing. So on the one hand, when you bet the river, they're not going to be slow playing enough. They're not going to have enough like two pairs and sets and things like that. So you're not going to get check raised as often as you should do. But on the other hand, you might have like less equity than a solver would as the imposition guy. So it can be kind of tricky to work out how to deal with that.
Yeah, or they might overfold actually their lower stuff and just have too much king X. So when called, you just drop too much in equity. Not saying this value bet's necessarily bad in the river, but I think it's getting thinner.
Definitely in this formation where you're like big blind versus button, it's just
super thick. Yep.
But yeah, under the gun versus big blind, and like again, that can be something that I think people. At least I found it. I probably still do, but I definitely found it a few years ago, like difficult to adjust to the pre-flop formation. What's your under the gun opening range? Maybe like 15% of hands versus like 45% on the button.
Yeah.
So, and that's going to like massively affect post flop. But I think a lot of the time in game, it can be easy to just be like, I'm the imposition guy, you're the out position guy, and these are my thresholds.
Because visually it's the same, right? So it just looks the same to the eyes, and anything that looks the same to the eye, the human's going to underreact to it. So yeah.
Cool.
The devil is in the detail. That was a pig move, though. To quote Easty, that was an absolute pig move on the river by villain.
Saved money, to be fair. Like he could have just gone like super big, and you probably would have called.
Quite possibly. Can't we overbet this river exploitatively? No.
No. Like we say, the villain's just going to have like too much king X, like far more than they should. So on the one hand, they're going to be like capped in the sense they're not going to have like sets and two pairs, but on the other hand, they're going to have like far too much king X and.
We just don't have the requisite value, equity to value bet. King Queen Man owned you. Shut up, Johnny. No, he didn't.
You can overbet like aces, like stuff that beats that part of the range that shouldn't be there, but not stuff that loses to it.
Right.
Cold call in the hijack.
I actually do this sometimes because sometimes the table's really soft and then the under the gun openers are reg, and also like GG ranges just do more cold call based on rate cap. And then it actually does pretty well. And based on the fact that when you 3-bet and take it down, you get raked as well. You remember that.
That's disgusting.
It is revolting. So cold calling is a thing here for me, and I very much like it. And a lot of the better rigs in the pool also do it. So this isn't as much of a sign in this pool as it might be normally. This is a fish. Why are we... How did we... Oh, maybe this was a fish. Yeah, this was a fish. Or I'm folding flop. Maybe we can fold flop anyway. I figure there'll be some merges here, but this is so grim.
There will be merges. Half pot isn't like... Half pot is like the size from fish that you want to see. It's like the most bluff heavy size, like the weakest size, right? So Yeah, I don't mind cornering, but it's so grim, and you're kind of going to end up in like no man's land. Okay, you're going to just bink on the turn. You're going to kind of end up in like no man's land on the turn of the river, and sometimes it is better rather than like if you've got like a kind of close situation, you're going to be like, I've just got no idea what to do on turn of river. Like maybe rather than just like messing up big time when the pot's much bigger, it's sometimes better to just like get out of the way early. It's the thing, like
Indeed.
a lot of weaker players do. Like part of the reason why like being super aggressive can work so well is that a lot of people be like, oh, this guy's really aggressive, so they're like, call the flop and call the turn, and like inevitably the run out will kind of get worse for you, and you can kind of like wuss out on the river. Like that's like what those like people who like triple barrel a bunch like feed off of, is people who just like try and defend well on the flop, try and defend well on the turn, and then just like fall apart in the river. Like you're much better just like overfolding the flop and then just never folding turn and river against those guys.
Yep, for sure. It's like the burning building. Like you're either in it and you're going to go into the very end and get your wallet back out of it, or you're just going to leave instantly when it starts when the aggression starts. You know, when the flames start rising. So I just don't like. I never like the thought process of call one and reevaluate, because like, well, if a maniac just potted the flop at you, what the fuck do you mean reevaluate? You're about to face a second pot size bet on the turn, right? Like, don't call one. Either call down or just like fold your hand now. Like, don't go here, have my red line. Like, don't hand your red line over to maniacs. I think I should lead the turn, because against a recreational player, most of the hands that bet here also call, and there's many hands that call but don't bet here. So I think this is just simple like mode of investment mistake.
I don't know. Like, there's nothing wrong with check raise at all.
True.
And if people are going to be like too much, it really probably does depend on the type of fish. I know it almost always depends on the type of fish, but there's a lot of fish who just make these like mergy errors, and there'll be a bunch of guys who are like far too wide and then just like randomly bet. So they'll be betting hands like 10-9, 10 jack, like pocket jacks, kind of for no reason. I think Sam shared a hand like earlier where some guy just makes an obvious polarization error on the turn right in the, I don't know if you saw in the WhatsApp group. Like some people just like randomly barrel for no reason with like a middling strength hand. And against that guy, obviously like check raising is going to be like good in the sense that you're just going to get more value from those kind of random middling hands. But that'll be fish dependent. A lot of fish that are more, you mentioned the fish on GG a lot more like straightforward and kind of type passive. And in which case, yeah, like donking does make a lot of sense, because you don't want them checking back like an ace.
Yep, I think that's totally right. Like, and so many guys that I've taught just not refuse, but they're just like oblivious to the opponent type. So their opponent could be a 50-15 and they snap check the turn, or the opponent could be a 75-60 and they still snap check the turn. The point is they're playing a very pivotal hand that swings a lot based on passivity of opponent, in completely the same way against two opposite archetypes of player, and that's just not right. So you're right to point that out. Okay. Check, and I think we want to go pretty big. I think we want to play our hand as an overbet.
You've definitely got to consider check raise, right?
Yep. I've already rejected it.
Okay.
The reason I've rejected it is I just think that the range is just super merged here, just way too merged and not polar enough and not bluffing enough if I check. So I'm just gonna overbet.
Yeah. Again, it'll depend. Like some fish will like bluff or just bet for no reason with a 10.
Sure.
Fish do generally like over defend versus raises. So that they'll just like bet an ace and then call it. That'll obviously be like super fish dependent. So
yeah, a lot of them do have like if you play enough hands in like the Hippodrome in London at 1-2, you might actually decide that you just have the best hand always here with ace jack, because against the pool you just do, and then you just go for that bet. Like if you watch like a live player vlog, it's like, and we're pretty sure we've got the best hand here, so we go for a bet of 60% pot. Villain calls and mucks his hand and looks unhappy, and we scoop in a lovely pot with ace jack, and it's like, fuck this. Fuck watching this shit. Fuck watching live poker. I'm not watching it. No.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Fish under bluff rivers 2 in general, right, is a question, Pete. Do you want
to... yeah, so this is such a general statement that it's just like such an absurd thing to say. It's like saying something like mushrooms are awful. They're very dangerous and they kill people. It's like, well, yeah, if you eat a fucking panther cap or a death cap, you're gonna die probably. But also, you had mushroom risotto last night, and shiitake mushrooms are nice, and it's just such a generally useless thing to say. Like, fish will underbluff a river when it's hard to have nothing, when they have a tight filtered range, when the board is scary, wet, and the aggression is continuous and big, and they will grossly overbluff river when the aggression is scattered, the board is easy to miss, the starting range is too wide, and they've been unfiltered. That's basically the summary.
Yeah, but also like on top of that, fish, like we said, they make polarization errors, right? And some fish will. I mean, I don't even know if it's a polarization error, but there'll be a bunch of fish who just bet like middle weak pairs for kind of like no reason. Or that fish just bluff differently to regs. Regs bluff polarized. Regs will bluff here when they've like completely whiffed, whereas a bunch of fish will just bet like a 6 or an 8 or a 10 here for like no reason. You ever played like live and you bluff air and then you get a call and you show it and the fish is like, why did you bet that? Like you have nothing.
Yes.
And then they'll like end up bluffing with like third pair. It's
Third
like,
pair,
oh, I
yeah.
have third pair, so I can bluff this. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
the thing from some fish as well. So
Yeah.
like what you said is true, but then also and we played this passively, right? Like you bet flop, check turn, and then if he bets the river, there's doesn't necessarily need to be underbluffed, especially if he's a sort of fish that just bluffs with
again, very fish
9
dependent.
or
Like
6x.
again, like if your opponent's a 33-9, you should just lead, and if your opponent's like an aggro spewy guy, you should check raise. It really does. Like once we have that read, it's almost so obvious that we just know what to do, and then before we have that read, it's like what's better against pool, and it's hard to say, right? Like without data or something, it's hard to say. Your brother Max is in the chat, by the way, James. Shout out to Max
Yeah,
Shea.
I saw that. That was an unusual one. I was like, is that me if I said something? Who's Max?
Oh, it's Sam Stockman. Sam Stockman's in the chat. Oh no. Oh no.
So we'll end soon, don't worry.
Oh no.
So how big do you go? It's got to be like 2 or 3x, right?
This is horrible.
Yes.
This is really bad, yeah. Unless this was actually against like some really like good player, but I don't think so. I seem to remember it being against the fish.
Okay. Well,
I don't like
make
it.
mistakes.
Oh no, I remember who it was. It was an absolute netbox Asian flag reg. And therefore I actually like this now. This was an exploit. I remember why I did this now, thank God. I did this because these stains, right? Meaning the player types that play in Italy, right? They're not all from Asian countries, guys, but sometimes they are. But generally the Netherlands players and these are going to be more aggressive, right? So when you have one of these flags that's like a bit more demographically leaning passively and tight, and they have like the 18 VPIP, if you overbet here, you get no calls. So you just overbet bluff, and then you just like do this for value is basically the exploit.
Yeah. So like just they cut their range, they are nits, so you just like overbet them. Yeah, it's definitely leading the turn though.
I remember now who villain was, and it all makes sense. But now I actually think I should fold the flop for sure against this player. I don't know why I called the flop. Yep.
Also, like lead the turn once you've called if he's
agreed
too tight.
Call flop as played, lead turn, and bet river something that he'll call. He tanked down to 1 second here from 34.
It's terrible. It's so
I'm actually surprised I got
a
called.
value beater, right? Like he chops with ace jack at the very least. Probably beats ace 9.
It's a very underbluff spot though after filtering, I think, from this player. I mean, I'm under the gun. It's a super underbluff spot. Like I think he should fold actually against pool.
You're gonna bluff like diamonds and 8.
I don't have many diamonds and 8 though that aren't king because like I'm under the gun again. I'm not big blind here or something.
I suppose.
So.
Yeah, true.
All right,
have to bluff a 10, I guess.
Yep.
But you probably will against him, but you'll just overbet it.
All in. What happened? We won
2.
both. No, we didn't.
No, you lost ace queen.
I never win both. Come on. Rigged. What products do I buy to learn about the stains? We can learn how not to be a stain by getting Cash Injection or the Carrot Poker School or both. You can also get Grade 1 and Cash Injection for free with the Back to School bundle this September, or if you fancy live tuition and plugging all the holes in your game, make your game a fortress with The Fortress by James Shea this September. By the way, guys, I know I'm being a corny salesman right now. It's part of the skit. It's not that I'm actually like this. Am I? Am I like this? Anyway.
It's like any job you do, and then you realize like a big part of it is marketing, and it's like no one wants to do marketing. We just want to like deliver poker content, but
I kind of love marketing now. I actually I don't like marketing like stuff I'm not excited about, but when I'm really excited about something like Weapons of War, I really enjoy marketing it. The Fortress as well, I it's not my product, so I'm not as personally invested, but I still like the marketing side of it for sure.
Okay, good. It's a good thing to be enthusiastic about.
I really like business. Business is really fun to me. Otherwise I wouldn't do this, right? It's just a lot of work if you're not really into it. Anyway, this is a 4-bet pot with Ace King. I think you can call here as well. And we go small. We oh my god, yeah. I butchered this. Oh my god. Oh no. I don't like this hand. It's not a great hand. So in game, I reasoned as follows, James. This is a low SPR. Most of my range is going to play jam. My overpairs will play jam. This hand has to be a frequent jam, otherwise I would just be jamming flush draws and overpairs. Therefore, I'm going to jam. And then afterwards, I was like, wait, this is just so fucking underbluffed and strong and nitty, and I'm just like, I should just fold, probably. I don't know, I'm getting 1,000,000 to 1, but I'm going to face a turn bet all the time, and unless the turn is a jack, it's not going to be a great spot. We could call, but then again, like what are we hoping happens? We just get the jack turn? Like, is that what we're hoping? Like, he's not really bluffing the spot much, right? At least with jam, you get it in against ace jack of clubs and don't meekly check call flop fold turn. I actually don't like call that much either. I actually like fold here. What do you think, James?
I've kind of followed the same process as you. Like, jamming is like really straightforward. It's just going to happen. Like when the SPR is low, it's just going to happen like a ton in theory. But at the same time, villain's just almost certainly under bluffing.
Yep.
And then the problem with call is that he's just going to always barrel. Like if he is bluffing and it's like clubs or king jack or something like that, just always shoving the turn.
Yep.
And then so you're basically, if it's like under bluff like we think it is, then I don't know what you're hoping for. Like he has ace jack of clubs and jams the turn and you fold, or you really just trying to hit a jack, aren't you? That's like the only.
Yeah, we hit a spade. We still face jam almost always, and it's like, yeah, I think we just fold the flop here. I think you either just shove and you make sure you get it in. Like, this is the best ace king to shove because you unblock clubs and you have backdoor bailout. So this is a great shove, probably, in theory. But fuck that. I shouldn't be doing that here. I should just be folding.
And again, this is like the tightest formation you'll ever find, right? Like 4-bet pot under the gun versus cut off on GG.
Yeah. This is a fold.
It's pretty grim.
Guesses? Yes, it's an exploit fold dial. It's exactly what it is. It's not a fold in theory.
Ace queen.
Yes, style. Exactly.
Must be.
Well done.
It's like 90% of his range, to be fair.
Yeah, because queens will want to slow play, tens might want to slow play. This is the one that wants to fast play the most.
Well, this is a lot more ace queen than there are tens.
That's, well, not really, because ace queen off doesn't really flat in these positions, I don't think.
Okay. Some people will call it, definitely.
Well, anyway, he has 60% tens to ace queen if he was raising all of them, but it's close.
Yeah, okay.
Queen's possible too. Yeah, I don't like that. I think I just missed an exploit there and couldn't bring myself to, again, the voice is like, don't play like a scared coward and do what you're meant to do in theory and be a good boy and take your theoretical medicine, and yeah, it's just not great in that spot.
I probably would have just like ended up calling and realizing later it was a mistake, to be honest. Like I'd just be like, okay, I don't want to jam for those reasons. I know it's like almost certainly not a fold in equilibrium, so I'm just going to call, but really, probably just a fold. I mean, maybe it even is allowed to fold in equilibrium.
I don't think so.
It's like the bottom of your range, right?
No, because it's the backdoor ace king, and we also have ace 5 suited and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have like
what I guess you're only supposed to fold like 20% of the time.
And also when you say it's the bottom of our range from a jamming suitability standpoint, it's probably not either, because like, where's that hand gone? There we go. This is like, if you're on the flop here with like jacks, jamming jacks is more nonsensical than jamming this hand, right? Just for example. I don't know. I just hate it in real life. We do have quite a bit of equity here against ace queen. Like, we have more than you would think, but it's still just not anywhere near enough. And the fold equity is just like so low. The saving grace here is like, okay, sometimes he has king jack. The reason I jammed in game as well is I thought he could have king jack suited or like ace x of clubs sometimes, but it's only really ace jack of clubs or jack 10 of clubs maybe, and jack 10 of clubs beats us. It's probably not raising. I'm rambling. Yeah, I think these hands are just not choosing to raise very often when they could just call. I think that's the biggest problem here. This is more just a hand that's trying to protect, get its money in now, end the action. It's the made hand most of the time. Yep. All right, James. We're 5 minutes to the end of the stream. Why don't you say a little bit more about what's happening tomorrow night at 7 p.m? You're muted.
Whoopsie. Should we like show the syllabus?
Now you're making me do technical things, but yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we can show the syllabus.
You got it, or do you want me to send it to you?
I have it. I'm gonna find it in my...
Oh, this is dangerous.
No, it's okay, they can't see this.
Oh, okay.
like banking stuff I was sending, the meta. I'm renowned for this, basically. Yeah.
Pizza can use download files, which...
I mean, it's nothing like dirty or anything. It's just like sensitive information, if you see what I'm saying, guys. You know, bank details and stuff. Because why wouldn't you just have that in your downloads, right? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, so what this is going to is, like I said, the first half of episode 1 is really talking about like study, how to study, what not to study, with the idea of your study time's limited, and it can be like really hard to know what to study in a way that actually improves you. So like from an EV standpoint, you want to work out the things that are going to improve your win rate, the things that are going to improve your win rate fastest, and then just study those and then ignore the stuff that might be really like seem impactful but end up like not being. So the first half is, like I say, kind of my favorite part of it, which is going over like what you should be studying and the process of studying in a way that's really, really efficient to actually improve your game and win rate, rather than spending loads and loads of time on stuff that might improve certain aspects of your knowledge but not actually improve your win rate. And then the rest of the course, up to the end of episode 5, is really going into the detail of like, we've explained like how to study and what to study, and then this is us like studying those things. So it's kind of going through, I've done the study for you, these are the outputs of the study, this is how you would do it yourself. Like I say, really like practical course, and like going through some of the most important spots in the game tree. So you can kind of rank how important a spot is based on how often it comes up and how much money kind of flows through those spots, and really focus on those. So that's why these spots have been picked. They might seem quite fundamental and basic, and there's a reason for that. It's because they're common, they impact your win rate, and also there's stuff like low-hanging fruit that can kind of improve your game and your strategy. Then, like I say, from the practical side of things, this is a course on building human playable strategies and building like human playable concepts. So some of the stuff might be kind of like we said earlier with the 3 of a kind. Like you might want to raise your a6 on a 6-6-8 board and then call your 6-5. It's like building those kind of human viable strategies that are based on what a solver's doing without having to like memorize the solver is raising Jack 6 more than Queen 6 but less than 10-6 and all this kind of stuff that isn't actually going to improve your game. And then the final episode, I've got some actually some like really, really valuable, I think, content ready for the final episode. But really, a big part of the episode is going to be like Q&A. Like, what did you guys find from the lectures? Is there anything that you kind of that you've been trying to implement and not got right? It's really like an open Q&A for you to ask like anything that could be on the lectures or could be something different, to kind of like pick the brains of a high stakes player. And then once we've done that, like I say, there's some really, I think, like impactful stuff on bluff catching, value betting, and value raising. So really the value side of things, we kind of touched on it in our kind of call today, Pete, haven't we? Yep. Talking about like value betting the river, the mistakes people make, but it'll be like some specific detail on how to think about building value betting ranges, how to understand what's happening in equilibrium, which can often be quite unintuitive. And then how, like, there's some good stuff, I think, there on exploits, like the mistakes that people will make. Like we've seen some of them with your opponent checking that king queen on the king high board. Yep. Go into like the mistakes people make and then how to exploit them. And the reason I like this one, again, like my favorites are probably episode 1 and episode 6, is because river is probably, it's the most impactful street in the sense that the most money is there on the river, and also probably the most misplayed street. So there's lots of exploits, there's lots of spots where you can kind of close your own leaks on the river, but it is because the river is a lot more general. Like on the flop it'll be like c bet, don't c bet, face c bet, like it's fairly simple, but on the river you've got like an infinite number of ways you could have arrived on the river, so it's more like conceptual, like these are the concepts that'll help. Yeah, it's like knowing where you are before you, like if you don't know where you are, you don't know where to go. So like you're on the river looking around, taking like stock of your environment, how did you get here, what the ranges that landed here, and then figure out what to do next. So yeah, but there's lots of like I say, general concepts, like we said about it can be really unintuitive how thin you're supposed to value bet the river on a non-flush close, on a brick card. Yeah, right, like those like unintuitive things that that you can kind of find in your own game, and we'd look at some hands and find some examples and stuff to go through. So like I say, it's kind of more conceptual, but these are the concepts that I think you should be thinking about on the river. Oh, so sign up for Fortress here. We're taking this down tomorrow, guys, so you have like a day to sign up, and then this is coming down and we're closing sign up, and we still have spaces left, so do get in fast if you want to join the Fortress. Highly recommend it. It was a huge success last year, and this is the last time that we're running it in this format. It will be part of a much bigger, more expensive boot camp that contains tons of stuff next year in 2025 at some point. Just one more thing that I'll just add to it as well, like because it is, I say, practical. There's a lot of stuff on there's some stuff on exploits, and the way that I get to that is I've got some students to send me some hands. You can send me your hands, and we'll pull out your stats that are relevant to the lectures that we go over, and say like, you guys, these are the mistakes that you're making. You can see from your pools as well. These are the mistakes that the pool's making, and that'll kind of inform a lot of the kind of the strategies that we go over. Cutting out mistakes and kind of adjusting your strategy to exploit the mistakes pool are making. So there's a bit of like a personal touch in there as well if you decide to send me your hands, and if you don't, then you'll see hands from other people who have done the fortress, either doing it now or have done it in the past.
And you can be kept anonymous, like we don't show your screen names in that part of it or anything like that.
Yep.
All right, James, how did I play today overall? What would you say is your final summary of what we did here on stream?
Played well. I'd say you weren't like as angry as I was hoping you would be, but
I was angry at the start with the tech issues.
Yeah, you calmed down, which was a shame, but some good poker in there, and like it's nice to like go over and find the mistakes that you make and just kind of understand like that king's hand. It's like, okay, no, this is a mistake, and that's the benefit of hand history review, is like it's the thing of, I know these are mistakes, and so I need to work on like the execution. I need to like stop making these mistakes, and you can only do that with a hand history review. So it's always a good way to.
Yeah, I think this one, like I kind of knew in my heart of hearts when I was doing it that it was wrong. Like, you know, when you like just can't quite bring yourself to do the discipline thing, but you know the discipline thing is right, just can't bring yourself to do it. It was definitely one of those. But I think apart from this hand, I'm pretty happy. Apart from the king's flop call, I think that's a fold. And apart from this hand, which I think is a fold, yeah, we're just we're playing quite solidly now when we're in the zone, and I'm trying to play in the morning when I'm fresh, when I'm in the zone. And yeah, we'll go from there. We'll maybe do this again soon. James also has some content on Carrot Corner if you want to check out the subscription service on there. But yeah, the Fortress is happening for the next 6 weeks, starting tomorrow. Last chance to do it. Highly recommend it. Can't say enough good things about that seminar course. And yeah, I'll do more of these on YouTube. The reason we're doing this on YouTube, Sam, is that Twitch viewership is just not very good, and with YouTube people can find it easily and watch it later and stuff like that. So this is probably going to be the home of our streams from now on, but we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, thanks so much for today. Thank you, James, and I hope it goes well tomorrow with the first class, and have a pleasant evening, everyone.